We live in an era of gaming remakes and remasters. In theory, that isn't so bad, because getting hold of old consoles can become tedious in a relatively short amount of time, and old games sometimes lack quality of life features that we've gotten used to. However, with full-blown remakes of Xbox 360 or even PS4 games like Horizon Zero Dawn, we are seeing diminishing returns. There hasn't been that much technical progress since the original The Last of Us, for example, which was already playable across 3 console generations without problems before getting yet another PS5 remake. In my opinion, this goes back to a far too often unreflected debate about the alleged outdated nature of many classics. In this video, I'll argue why we need to look at old games differently, why game preservation and remakes took a wrong turn, and why this negatively affects everyone involved. Games themselves don't change over time. Code does not decay. What changes are our expectations regarding technology and quality of life features. A pioneer like the first Final Fantasy on the NES is quite outdated for modern habits. Standards of turn-based menu navigation and pacing didn't exist yet. But also on the NES, Super Mario Bros. 3 is considered a classic to this day. This shows that you can't dismiss all of video game history before a certain point by claiming that everything has aged poorly. It comes down to expectations. Accordingly, I wouldn't push old titles on casual gamers, just as you might not recommend black and white films with subtitles to casual cinema goers. But you'd expect enthusiasts of a medium to appreciate classics rather than resorting to shallow arguments about age. In fact, they often barely are arguments at all. The phrase "a game is too old" or "has aged too poorly" is a platitude used to shut down meaningful criticism and discussion of certain titles, or claiming that you could only enjoy a classic through nostalgia or something, and any other opinion is therefore invalid. This is similar to claims of objectivity, which often accompany such sentiments. A game from 2005 is then said to be objectively worse than a game from 2025, and has objectively aged poorly. But concepts like good and bad are purely subjective. There's a reason there were discussions about the aesthetic of the Demon's Souls remake. Objectively, the remake has a higher polygon number, that's an undisputable fact, but quote-unquote objectively better, which means universally better and set in stone, the new graphics are not, because some prefer the rougher atmosphere of the original look. Also, the days of clunky NES gameplay are long behind us. Just one generation later, consoles like Super Nintendo or Sega Mega Drive introduced many classics which are great to play even today, and the sprite work sometimes looks even better in HD emulation. This has nothing to do with nostalgia. Early 3D games often seem more awkward, but they can't be lumped together either. The remake for Shadow of the Colossus, for example, made sense because the original button layout wasn't intuitive, but that was already criticized by many at the time of release. In atmosphere, however, it is a timeless masterpiece. Dead Space, which now has a remake, had a few flaws in the original version. That asteroid minigame was an awful pace killer, but that has nothing to do with age. Bad minigames aren't exclusive to old games at all. Games haven't evolved that drastically since the Xbox 360 era. Dead Space continues to play fine. If a PS360 game doesn't hold up today, it was likely always more style than substance, or simply wasn't very good. The span between the Resident Evil remake in 2002 and the original in 1996 was way shorter than Dead Space in 2008 versus its remake in 2023, but the leap forward was still bigger in Resident Evil because tech kept making smaller leaps afterwards. In general, many later shooters could have learned a thing or two from Dead Space, not the other way around. Looking at common criticism of the original versions of two now remade milestones, Resident Evil 4 and Metroid Prime, also shows some people confuse age with alternative game systems. Both original titles might scare some people because they don't have familiar shooting controls comparable to later AAA games. But that's not how they are meant to be played. The old RE4 on purpose creates tension through the fact that you draw your gun quote unquote realistically slow, without superhero flexibility. Metroid Prime, despite its looks, wasn't a classic shooter but an action-adventure game like Zelda, making fight secondary and giving it the same lock-on system. Trying to control these games like fast-paced shooters is playing them wrong. Many remakes, like for Resident Evil, are absolutely great, but also apart from the name, sometimes different games altogether, new interpretations. But an older version of a game isn't bad simply because it doesn't play like newer titles or requires an adjustment period. Especially since some concepts from back then are still unique. For whatever reason, at some point arcade racers focused on online open worlds. If I'm looking for racing games with traditional tracks, classics like Burnout or F-Zero GX remain the pinnacle. The cinematography of fixed camera angles also made old titles atmospherically stand out. The remakes of Final Fantasy VII or Resident Evil 2, for example, despite very high quality, were simply tuned differently. Not worse, not better, just different. Sadly, some fixed camera games came with weird tank controls, a flaw that also didn't necessarily come from modern sensibilities. These controls were rightfully hated even back in the day. Yet, if you learn them for an hour or so, you can still discover good games which don't exist like that anymore. Even old God of War had a different atmosphere with the cinematic camera angles, which is gone with the oh so modern behind the shoulder camera. Meanwhile, remakes of Crash Team Racing or Tony Hawk were extremely authentic to the old gameplay, but still earned top ratings, which is why it's overblown to write off gameplay from older eras automatically. Often small tweaks are enough to improve games without remaking them from the ground up, be it with new button assignments, skippable cutscenes, save states and so on. But you can't count on all games getting premium remasters. So where games really age poorly is legal availability. Old hardware becomes cumbersome to buy and hook up, and often comes with muddy picture quality or weird controllers. A good role model is GOG on PCs, which officially sells and emulates tons of classics without DRM. So what we need to ask for, in my opinion, instead of gigantic remake projects of still good games, is adequate backwards compatibility from all publishers. Not just by hackers who are often sued for their actual good preservation efforts. Platform holders are becoming less interested in offering broad, glitch-free access to classics and more focused on exploiting a few nostalgic IPs, while certain CEOs claim that no one would want to play the bigger chunk of classics anyway, giving excuse to redundant projects like remaking The Last of Us 12 times. It should be the other way around, creating broad backwards compatibility with high quality legal emulators and only remaking what's truly in need of renovation. Because no matter how much some people say otherwise, games with a few years under their belt are not automatically broken relics.